Hello, welcome to my channel. And in this video, I'm going to go over the monthly forecast for April 2023. My name is Adina. I'm an intuitive astrologer. And in these monthly videos, I go over the astrology and messages that I get using my intuition. So let's get right into it. And if you are looking for a personal reading from me, you can find me and email me directly at adeana.intuitiveastrologer@gmail.com. And also, you can find me on my other social media platforms, which I post daily content, astrological content, and spiritual content. My Instagram is at adeana.intuitiveastrologer, and my TikTok is at adeana.astrologer. So before we get into April, let's talk about some of the energy that we have been moving through over March 2023. This was one of the biggest, well, probably the biggest months we have, especially astrologically, for 2023. We had Saturn enter Pisces, we had Venus enter Taurus, Pluto enter Aquarius, and Mars enter Cancer. This was very big energetic shifts because we've had Saturn in Aquarius for 2+ years. We've had Pluto in Capricorn for 15 years. And then the Mars energy, we've had Mars in Gemini since last August of 2022. And because Mars was in Gemini, which is an air sign. Gemini very much rules our communication and our mind and mindset. We've had this influence from Mars kind of over, empowering that energy when it comes to our information that we're receiving and even how we are communicating. So these have all been really big energetic shifts, and we got them all literally within a few weeks of each other. So let's go over some of this Saturn and Pisces energy first, just briefly. We won't stay too much on this, but Saturn moving into entering Pisces, what I've noticed so far with this energy is a lot of people are talking about sleep, whether they are not able to sleep anymore or dreams. So I find this very fascinating because Pisces rules dreams and can rule sleep, and Saturn is that restrictive energy. So it's really interesting. And one thing I always really like to talk about whenever I touch on the Saturn and Pisces energy is the spiritual component of it, because Pisces is so spiritual and Saturn is like there's this energy where we're really able to tap into our spirit. We can really develop a spiritual practice. Like, this is energy that is very supportive for developing a strong spiritual practice. So this is really what I tell all my clients and stuff. And of course, you know how this energy is showing up for you. If you know your birth chart, you're able to see the themes and topics that this is really working with. But in a general sense, Saturn in Pisces is very nice for that, developing that solid spiritual practice. The one thing like I said, I've noticed is the whole dream and sleeping. It doesn't seem to be so nice in. Venus entering Taurus was definitely nice. Venus rules Taurus. So we do have Venus forming that conjunction to Uranus, which is around the time of me recording this video, actually. So this I've noticed very much so with the financial systems. This Venus energy in Taurus represents that as well, which we will get into because there's some Taurus energy this month as well. But Taurus represents our stability, our security, our supply chains. So anything like our food supply chains, our financial systems, anything like that is very Taurian. So it's really interesting. And then Venus can represent that as well. So all the energy that we've moved through over the month of March with Venus has showed up very much in our world of financial systems, food supply, money. So it's really interesting. And then Pluto and Aquarius energy, the one thing I wanted to bring up about this was I noticed that the day Pluto entered Aquarius was the day that there was the rising of the people in France. I believe it was March 23rd. I found that was really interesting. And I'm also in the process of, I'm almost done. I'm creating a Pluto and Aquarius presentation on here, similar to what I did with my Saturn and Pisces presentation. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. And I do go through all 12 signs. So I'm doing the same with Pluto and Aquarius, where I record it through a presentation like this. And I really go into detail on the mythology of Pluto. So I'm really excited about it. Definitely check it out. I'm very proud. And I really can't wait for you guys to see that and me bring it to you. So, and then the Mars entering Cancer, which I did already touch on a little bit when it comes to our communication. And so we went from Mars in Gemini, influencing our communication, to now in Cancer, which is a very receptive sign, which is a very emotional sign and feelings. And so now there's like, and Mars doesn't do that great in Cancer. So there's now this different energy, and it can have to do with motivation and willpower. So if you're feeling a little lack of in those areas, it may be why. One thing I noted in my daily posts on my social media, so TikTok and Instagram, was when the moon formed a conjunction to Mars in Cancer, we had a lot of like really heightened energy and emotions at that time. So that's another thing you want to know, is the moon transiting around the zodiac with all of these new astrological aspects, because all of the larger planets, the outer planets, have moved, and the moon is now hitting these planets in a different sign. The moon represents our feelings, our emotions, our intuition. So we are all feeling very new energy, because as the moon is forming a trine and forming a square and forming a sextile to Saturn and Pluto and Mars and all of these new um, um, signs, this is very different energy. So if you want even clues into or tips and kind of heads up on that energy, follow my social media, because I do post about that every day. So now let's get into the highlights of April. So April 3rd, we have Mercury entering Taurus. April 6th, we have the full moon in Libra. And April 11th, we have Venus entering Gemini. April 19th, we have the solar eclipse, new moon in Aries. Is that right? Oh, yeah, that is right. Sorry, I had to think about that. Yes, the April 19th is the solar eclipse, new moon in Aries. And then right after that, the sun will enter Taurus on April 20th. And the interesting thing this year is, because we had two, which we will get into, but we had two new moons in Aries, which is very interesting. And then this one coming up is going to be a solar eclipse. And then April 21st, we have Mercury stationing stationing retrograde. And then in Gemini at 15 degrees. So we've had a few months of all planets direct. In April, Mercury sets the tone for all the planets, kind of will start to station retrograde. So anything we really want to get going, we want to start setting in motion now, because as the time goes on now after April, we will start having more and more planets stationed retrograde. We have Uranus station retrograde, Saturn, all the planets will start to station. And then in July, this summer, we have Venus stationing retrograde in Leo, which I will talk a lot about later on, but that's another really big energy. Okay, so let's start off with Mercury and Taurus. So as I kind of said earlier in the video, Taurus really represents our stability, our security. So our financial systems, our food supply, this can be more stuff with the bank, stuff like that. So I put here bringing in new information or ideas around Taurian themes and topics. So like food, financial systems, money, and relationships. And there's been a lot of stuff. So kind of pulling it in a little bit individually, I feel like we are really all going through things with relationships. I also, this is something else I've been talking about on my other platforms, but there's a lot of individual energy around relationships, because we had Venus in Taurus with the North Node, and the North Node represents the direction we're going in. Venus is relationships. And then in July, the nodes are going to shift. The interesting thing, which I will make a video on about that as well, so stay tuned for that. That's another huge energy shift. But what I wanted to note about this is that, so the North Node, for those of you who don't know, the North Node is the direction we are going in this lifetime. Like, so our destiny, our purpose, kind of this magnetic pull we get pulled towards throughout life. And the South Node is where we're comfortable. This can be even through past lives, karmic, but it's what we know, whether it is from past lives or just where we feel comfortable in this life. So there's a we need to create a balance between the two, but we essentially want to move into our North Node. It's part of why we incarnated in this lifetime. So right now, the North Node is in Taurus and the South Node is in Scorpio. And in July, the nodes are going to change signs. The North Node is going to move into Aries and the South Node is going to move into Libra. So right now, we have Venus as the dispositor, meaning ruling over the North Node, and we have Scorpio ruling over the South Node. That is going to shift in July. We will then have we will not Scorpio. We will then have Mars rule the North Node, because the North Node will be in Aries, and we are going to have Venus ruling the South Node because the South Node will be in Libra. So I find this very interesting how the energy of the nodes are going to shift. And I really feel on my intuition, I keep getting these intuitive downloads too, that it has to do with people and our life and personal connections and relationships where situations are going to be coming up, and it's going to be a releasing and a letting go of who is no longer in alignment with us, who we are maybe hanging on to too tightly that we need to let go, stuff around that. So I find this really interesting. And I kind of went into a bit of a tangent here in this Mercury and Taurus, but this is important energy. So I really did want to bring it up. Okay, now to get back on track. So Mercury will station retrograde, April 21st, 2023. And then Mercury will transit back over this area of your chart. So you do want to make note of the degree points and what comes up during that time while Mercury is moving through Taurus, because Mercury is going to retrograde back over those degree points. And this is a renewing or reevaluating. This is a time where we kind of go back over things that happened during that time, and we rework with that energy. So we just want to make note of that and anything that comes up during that time, Mercury and Taurus. Now let's talk a little bit about the full moon in Libra that we are going to have April 6th at 16 degrees. And this is another moon we are having at 16 degrees. Over the past year and a half, we have had a lot of moons, new moons and full moons at 16 degrees. So 16 degrees is an area of our chart in all of our houses that there's like a reprogramming. It's a very significant degree point lately. We've had a lot of moons at 16 degrees, so it's one thing to make note of. But here it is in Libra, again, relationships, financial systems. So I think in a global kind of energetic sphere, I think globally and collectively, we will see a lot of things with financial systems, money, but on a personal level, I really believe this has a lot to do with relationships and even the relationship that you have with yourself. There's a lot of energy right now about really focusing on and just developing an awareness of what and who is no longer in alignment with you. And it really is to get you to that energy, like, going down to your journey, like you have to release what is no longer in alignment for your own personal evolution. So this full moon is highlighting that all up. And also you will want to know, and I always post new and full moon videos and I go through all 12 signs. So I will post this as well, going through the signs and how this will show up for each person around their home. But Libra in general is relationships, money, stuff like that. So yeah, just another thing there's been a lot of Venus and Libra energy. And then again, here we go. Venus enters Gemini. So this energy, Gemini is all about communication, our mind and mindset. So this can really have us wanting to connect with friends. This can have us wanting to travel or just really get out there and communicating and verbally expressing, our desires, our passions, and wanting to spend time with the friendships or women in our life, because that's a Venus energy or a feminine energy. So Venus entering Gemini is interesting. And also, where you have Gemini in your chart, this is an area where you can have new friends show up. You could have opportunities with new social connections or connections, developing relationships, or money opportunities. So you want to note too where you have Gemini in your birth chart, because that will let you know the themes and topics. So, like, for example, if you have Gemini in the 10th house, this is around work, career, public reputation. Venus entering the 10th house can bring more relationships or connections as far as work goes. So understanding the house does help in knowing and understanding how this energy is going to show up. So now let's talk about the total solar eclipse, new moon in Aries at 29 degrees. And so this is really the beginning of a brand new cycle, because this energy is setting the tone for the next nodal cycle. Like I had mentioned earlier, the nodes are shifting signs and the North Node will be entering Aries. This is the first eclipse that we are having in Aries, setting the tone for this entire nodal cycle. So how I brought up earlier with relationships, a releasing and letting go of what is no longer in alignment. This is really what is going to put that energy out there. So it's really going to come up. And I've also felt too, like, really, like right now is when the situations can be coming up, but we may even find that in July we start to feel clarity and feel like we finally know, and then it's like a new beginning. So we're releasing and letting go of what is no longer in alignment and starting our new beginnings in a sense, because the North Node also represents our self and self-identity. So it's a really interesting energy. The nodes will shift into the Aries Libra axis in July of 2023, which I put that there. And I'm not going to go over this because I already did earlier. I should have saved that speech for this slide. But so this is really going to bring balance to relationships, or releasing and letting go of what and who is no longer in alignment in the relationship you have with yourself. So I did write that all down, but it really is. So yeah, this is just a time where if you feel like anything is coming up right now around relationships or things that, like, rediscovering yourself as well. It's the relationship with yourself and the relationship with others. So definitely something you want to know and be aware of. So now I will briefly go over just how these transits are hitting Canada for my fellow Canadians. So if you are not Canadian, you could just skip ahead. If you're not interested in this part, you can skip ahead. But okay, so for my fellow Canadians, as you see, so we have Saturn now in the 10th house of Pisces. So we have Saturn moving closer to aspecting that moon in the first house, which is interesting. We have Pluto now in the 8th house. We have Mars in the first house, already moving and activating over the moon, Uranus, the sun. So this is interesting. I think we are going to see a lot happen over the next month. I know I've been watching the news a little bit because I try not to watch the news too much, but there's a lot going on with that Bill C-11. And I think, like, I just got notified to my Twitter account how Trudeau's party almost tried to just get the bill passed, something along those lines. So I don't want to, like, quote anything, but look into it, because there's something going on where they're trying to, like, push the bill without really it getting approved. So it's very interesting. I think we're going to see some interesting things happen. And Mars is going through that first house, so it's really activating all of that. And Mars is aggression, fights, conflict. So we do want to be mindful of that. We have Mercury entering the 11th house, which is interesting because the Bill C-11 has to do with the social media and all of that. And we have Uranus right on top of Pluto in the 11th house right now, which is crazy. But we're going to have Mercury in the 11th house, and Mercury is communication and all of that. So it's interesting. I wonder if something will happen. I wonder if when Mercury joins up with Uranus in the 11th, if because he will eventually, and then Mercury's going to retrograde. Sorry, I'm kind of thinking out loud, but this is going to be interesting. There's something going on with that Bill C11. I think we need to watch, because I think we are going to have things come up. I don't necessarily want to see issues, but things come up. They said they were trying to ban TikTok, and there's all this energy and stuff around free speech and social media, free speech online, and like really trying to block. I think we are going to see more of that this month for sure, because the energy is definitely there. Then we're going to have the full moon in the 4th house of Libra. We'll have Venus enter the 12th house. So this can be a suppression of the people, because Venus is relationships, connections, right? And the 12th house really suppresses energy. So I wonder, that's more kind of energy around that. So I wonder if Venus will eventually conjunct maybe I'll make another video about this whole thing. I wonder if Venus will join up with a Venus, because we'll be going through the Venus return in the 12th house. I wonder if it's around the same time Mercury is going to join up here with Uranus and that. I might make another video. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to make a video about this, because I think this is really going to have a lot to do with that bill and suppressing information and communication of the people, which is interesting. And then we're going to have that solar eclipse in the 10th house, which has to do with government. And the nodes are going to be in there after July. The north node will be here. The south node will be here. The north node will be. So the solar eclipse is setting the tone. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up after the solar eclipse, giving us an idea of how the energy is going to be over the next 18 months when the nodes shift. Because the 10th house is all about. Sorry, I'm doing this because I don't know if you can see my arrow. I hope you can, because I think I've been kind of talking, so you can see my arrow. Anyways, I hope you can see my arrow, because I'm using a different type of programming. You might not be able to, so I might have just been describing my arrow. Oh wow, I hope you understand what I was saying. I just realized that I was using my arrow, and you may not even be able to see it. Oh, okay. Anyways, you get what I'm saying, because you see the Venus and the Pluto with Taurus and Gemini and all of that, and Aries in the 10th. And so the 10th house is government and authority figures, leadership, and all that type of stuff. So it's really interesting how this will show up. So the full moon in Libra at 16 degrees. Here's the charts here. So again, I'm using the arrow, and I don't know if you can see it or not. So the moon is going to be forming a quincunx to Uranus with the Pluto. Okay, so there we go. So you can see Uranus on top of Pluto, and then you see Venus at 24 degrees of Taurus, and then there's Mercury now in Taurus with the north. Mercury will be conjunct the north node at the time of this full moon. So that is the direction that Canada is going in right now. And this has to do with the people. Online connections. The 11th house is online connections, social media. The people, and online specifically, like online connections are specifically in the 11th house. So I think there's some stuff going on with this bill C11 that we are going to see come up for sure. And I think that's really the big significant energy. And then you can also see we've got Saturn here forming a sextile to Mercury, Saturn and Pisces forming that sextile to Mercury. So Saturn, I'm just the 9th house can be traveling, information, or like education, higher education, beliefs, stuff like that. And it can be, it's almost like it's trying to be a suppression of the people's beliefs, or a manipulation. Like, it's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. Okay, and then let's move on to the new moon in Aries, which is the solar eclipse at 29 degrees. And this is happening in the 10th house. As you can see right there, not too far from Jupiter. And this is in Canada's 10th house. So this is authority figures and public reputation, government. I always look at the 10th house as a government of a country when I'm looking at like a country birth chart. I do always kind of look at the 10th house as the government. But this is just really interesting. And at the time, so there you can see Venus is creeping up. Venus will be at 10 degrees of Gemini. So 5 degrees away from the Venus return. Oh, and look, at the time of the solar eclipse, Mercury is going to be conjunct Pluto with Uranus. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that what I said in the last slide? Crazy. Yeah, we are looking at massive changes and I think implementations of a suppression of information, trying to shut the people down. But the Mars in the first house can be the people just not having it. The governments might try to be doing it, but it's not. I think we're going to see a lot of energy around that for sure. And then the universal message for this month is I when I tapped into my intuition, I just got a lot around keeping your energy and vibration up and clean. So drinking lots of water, and that we are going through a cosmic cleanup. The veil is very thin and extremely easy to pick up on other energy. And this is interesting because you can be picking up on other people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and if you're not aware of this, then you think they're yours, and it can cause confusion. It can cause the feelings of defeat, where like you're not understanding why you're feeling this way. So these are things you really want to be aware of because the veil is very thin. It's very important right now to really protect your energy and understand that the energy we are moving through, um to keep your energy clean, because like attracts like. So the energy that you're vibrating at, the vibration you're vibrating at, you will attract more of that. So if you have your energy up, you can't really attract any lower vibrational things. Or I don't want to say you can't, but you have better awareness and control over it. And then so remember that what you focus on will manifest even if you don't want it to. So be careful of the energy that you're putting, be careful of the what oh my gosh, be careful of what you are putting your energy into. Meaning that, so for example, like, you know how I say I don't really watch the news because I don't like to focus too much on it, because they can put things on the news. Like, so for instance, this Bill C-11 for Canada, if they have everybody focused on it and worrying about it, it will manifest because everyone's focusing on it. So it's like we want to bring our awareness on it. We want to let the people know what's happening, but at the same time, we don't want to like put too much energy into it and focus on it too much because we'll manifest it for them. So these are just things we really want to be mindful of because we don't want to we want to be manifesting and putting our energy into the right places. And again, if you want a personal rating from me, you can find me at email me directly at adeana.intuitiveastrologer@gmail.com. And you can find me on my other social media platforms. Instagram is at adeana.intuitiveastrologer, and that's adeana.intuitiveastrologer. And then TikTok is at adeana, adeana.astrologer. And if you align with my energy, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can connect with more of you. And I really hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining me.